letting the public in. Recording. You are good there. Monica, I'm making you the host now.
Okay.
Can you make me the co-host again?
Yep.
You are good to go, Senator Waters.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Senate Transportation Committee. I am Senator David Waters. Today we'll be hearing House Bill 1182 and Amendment 1366S. Before we get started, I'll read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting that we are holding is in compliance with the Right to Know law. As chair of the Transportation Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom webinar for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom or YouTube and via phone by following the directions and links provided on the general port website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remotesenate@leg.state.nh.us. That's remotesenate@leg.state.nh.us, or call 603-271-3043. That's 603-271-3043. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Finally, let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state where they are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. So I will call the roll. Senator Hennessy.
I am here and I am in my house in a room by myself.
Senator LeVake.
Good morning. I am here in Brookline. I am in my home in a room by myself.
Senator Birdsall.
I am in Hampstead in my house in my room, in the room alone.
Senator Ward.
Senator Ward, you need to unmute yourself. You should be able to speak. There should be a button that says, there you go.
I'm Bruce Ward. I'm here in Stoddard. I am in the room by myself, but my husband is in the house.
I'm Senator David Waters. I'm in Dover, New Hampshire, in the room by myself. My wife is in the house. Well, thank you, colleagues, for that. I'd like to ask us now if we could rise to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would ask Senator LeVake to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Under God, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you very much, colleagues. I would like to say at the commencement of our hearing that I want to thank so much Sonia Caldwell and Griffin Roberge, Monica Cooper, Alan Raff, and everyone else in the Senate staff and also in OLS who has worked so hard to bring together this hearing and the materials that we're going to be considering today. It's great to see my colleagues as well. It's been a great effort for us to make sure that the public has access, that we have been able to conduct our business really in some ways rather normally in terms of hearing from agencies, constituents, bill sponsors, and bring together what we think is a good bipartisan package to meet the needs of the people of New Hampshire in this time of the COVID-19 crisis. Since we are considering today the 10-year highway plan, I have asked for a presentation to commence this session from the Department of Transportation. And so I want to recognize Commissioner Sheehan and others for their presentation, and they will take over the Zoom now.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to present on the 10-year plan. With me this morning in our conference room, socially distancing by sitting more than 6 feet apart, I have Kathy Mulcahy-Hansen, who is our legislative liaison and hearings examiner. Doing the presentation today is our Director of Project Development, Pete Stamness. We have our Assistant Commissioner, Bill Cass, our Deputy Commissioner, Chris Wozchuk, and our Bureau Administrator for Planning and Community Assistance, Bill Watson. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Victoria Sheehan, the Commissioner for DOT. I do want to say before we jump into our 10-year plan presentation that the department does support HB 1182, the bill that is being heard today, as well as the amendment to that bill before you. There are a number of items in the amendment that pertain to the Department of Transportation. And so while our presentation this morning will focus on the 10-year plan specifically, at the end of our presentation, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the other sections of the amendment that pertain to the department. So with no further ado, I'll turn it over to our Director of Project Development, Pete, who will provide you an update on the 10-year plan process and what changes have been made in recent weeks in preparation for this presentation today to Senate Transportation.
Let's go back here. Good morning, everyone. Again, this is Pete Stamness. I've got about 16 or 17 slides to go through. Shouldn't take the full 30 minutes. And really, this is a summary of the overall update of the draft 10-year plan. So the process to update the 10-year plan began about a year ago with our initial meetings with GASSET, the Governance Advisory Commission on Intermodal Transportation. Through those meetings, we identified strategies to use to develop the update of the draft 10-year plan. And in August, we released the first draft of the 10-year plan covering the years 2021 through 2030. Following that release, we held 20 public hearings across the state to solicit input from the public. Following the completion of those hearings in September and October, we met again with GASSET in November to review the commentary that we received, make some updates to the plan, and then forward it on to the governor in December of 2019. The governor then reviewed and updated as made some revisions to the plan, moved it over to the House, and here we are in the Senate phase with anticipation of having a signed plan and for the years 21 through 30 in the very near future. So I mentioned the strategies earlier. Many of the strategic recommendations that were utilized to update this 10-year plan are similar to previous plans. First and foremost, we want to maintain and preserve the existing network. We want to prioritize investments in pavement preservation, prioritize investments in redless bridges and bridge preservation, dedicate SB 367 funds for TIFIA loan pledge rural roads and bridges, complete I-93 Salem to Manchester, and increase funding for I-93 exit 4A, Derry, Londonderry. Financially constrain the plan to $183 million per year, and that's level federal funding across all 10 years of the plan. We've included $50 million for regional planning commission priority projects, and that's $25 million each in 2029 and years 2030. This draft addresses major project cost increases that were realized for the Exit 4A project, the Bow Concord I-93 project, and interstate rehabilitation projects. And the strategies to cover those major project cost increases include Garvey bonding with two new issues with a modified amount to $134 million. That's a $39 million issue in 2021 and a $95 million issue in 2026. The construction of I-93 Bow Concord was delayed by 2 years from 2024 to 2026. The transfer of $2.2 million of congestion mitigation and air quality funds to other federal categories.
So before we move on, I just want to stress our federal authorization, the FAST Act, expires in September. And while Congress is working on a reauthorization package, for the purposes of this 10-year plan to constrain the document financially, we assumed level federal funding. We are very optimistic that, especially in light of the COVID-19 situation, an effort to stimulate the economy, it is likely we will receive an increase in federal funding. If that does materialize, then we probably wouldn't need to bond at the level that was proposed as part of this 10-year plan. So that's something that we're watching closely, and certainly we'll adjust the plan accordingly.
Other strategies, maintain and extend all programs by 2 years to cover the new 2 years at the back end of the plan, and increase investment in bridge preservation and resurfacing programs to mitigate inflationary impacts on the programs. Next few slides provide a high-level funding synopsis for the draft 10-year plan. And Commissioner went through the current funding constraint set at $183 million per year. And that's, again, the funding that's exists in this last year of the 10-year plan. And that's carried for the balance of the through 2030. And the basic distribution of those funds, about $107 million on average, is assigned to paving and bridge projects. There's around $31 million annually for mandated federal programs like congestion mitigation and air quality, CMAQ, HSIP, which is Highway Safety Improvement Program. There's Garvey debt service through 2025 of $20 million. And the balance of those $183 million goes to individual roadway projects, around $25 million per year. On the state funding side, betterment funding, $24 million a year. That's 3 cents of the gas tax goes to preservation and maintenance of roads and bridges. Turnpike funding for capital and turnpike renewal and replacement work averages around $67 million per year. SB 367 funding for I-93 expansion, state aid bridge, and TIFIA debt service. So it's SB 367, the 4.2 cent gas tax, raises around $36 million per year. $32 million are available after the 12% comes off the top for municipal block grant aid. And the allocations for that are state aid bridge, $6.8 million per year. I-93 debt service, $2 million per year. And the debt service is paying on a $200 million loan, TIFIA loan, that was used to complete construction on I-93. And through 2025, we're paying $2 million per year, and that's interest only. There's also trying to move all the little thumbnails here. So there's TIFIA pledged paving and bridge work for $14 million per year, and $9 million per year goes towards bridges. In 2025, the full debt service kicks in 2026 through 2034, and that's $23 million per year. And the TIFIA pledged paving and bridge work no longer is available. Those funds are no longer available for the paving and bridge work, because they're all going through debt service on the $200 million loan for I-93 construction. On the airport side, Federal Aviation Administration, total of $288 million is programmed in the 10-year plan. There are 14 project locations, and they're listed by town and airport name. There are 12 federally eligible airports, 3 commercials, and 9 publicly owned airports. And there's also 12 non-federally eligible airports in the system. On the transit side, total of $312 million programmed in the 10-year plan. Funding is primarily Federal Transit Administration. It's restricted for transit services, and funding cannot be transferred to other uses. $200,000 in state funds for operating assistance are also included. On the rail side, total of $10.5 million programmed, around $1 million per year. There's a special railroad funding, approximately $600,000 per year. Those funds are used for maintenance and construction on state-owned rail lines, and the funds cannot be used for other needs. It's also $1.5 million every 3 years for a railroad revolving loan fund that is used for capital work on Class 3 in Cog Railroad. So we as I mentioned, we went out and held 20 public hearings to solicit input from the public, and that's our typical approach. In this round, we also developed an online survey, virtual public input, which was received fairly well. We obtained around 1,400 comments, respondents to the survey that was posted online. And for the Gasset hearing comments, I think we had around 400 or so overall for the 20 hearings. The most prominent comment that we received through the public hearings was the advocacy for expanding travel options. So folks thought that we had a highway-centric plan, a car-centric plan, and they would like to see more travel options available and more funding towards those travel options. On the online survey side, the respondents reflected, I guess, agreement with our strategies that we had identified early on. And the order, and those are found on the left-hand side: maintaining the system, reducing congestion, improving safety, expanding travel options, and enhancing system resilience. And basically, that confirmed our strategic approach. So we thought we got some pretty good input, and we will continue to use that virtual public input process and expand on it in future updates. So coming out of the hearings, some of the recommendations and strategies for updates. There were specific project needs that were identified during the hearing process. And so we added funding to some existing projects that were underfunded. There's $5.4 million added to Jefferson Randolph US 2 roadway improvement project, $3 million added to Dummer Cambridge Aero project on New Hampshire 16. There's $1 million added to the PE, the engineering phase for Hampton Ocean Boulevard. We're also identifying a fourth project here, which was a recent increase, $25 million added to Seabrook Hampton US 1A Bridge, Hampton Harbor Bridge. So we thought that was a significant change since the hearing process, and we wanted to make sure that you were aware that there was an increase that was included as part of this version of the draft 10-year plan. We accelerated 8 existing red list bridge projects, and we accelerated Bristol Lake Street project, Stratham 108 Bunker Hill project, and Londonderry intersection project for Route 28 and 128. They're all advanced 1 year based on commentary at the hearings. We added a project, Loudon Canterbury, New Hampshire 106 Phase 3, and it was funded $20 million. We increased Garvey to $134 million on large projects. And the first issue we mentioned before was $39 million in 2021, and that'll cover I-89 interstate rehabilitation projects, and we would accelerate those projects as part of the Garvey bond issue. And the second issue, $95 million in 2026, $45 million goes to I-93 Bow-Concord bridges, I-93 Concord bridges over the Merrimack River for $30 million, and we're funding the Loudon Canterbury 106 Phase 3 project, $20 million with that second Garvey issue.
So our deputy commissioner is pointing out that this is actually a reduction in bonding from what was presented in the governor's phase and then to House Public Works and Highways in the House phase of the 10-year plan. Recently, we did receive word that there was some additional federal dollars for bridge investment available to the department. And so we have programmed those dollars, and as a result, we've been able to reduce this level of Garvey or federal bonding. So as I mentioned before, should we be provided with additional federal money through reauthorization, we'll continue to reduce our need to bond and incur debt service. And we will also be working to advance projects ahead of where they're currently programmed in the 10-year plan, have projects on shelf so that we could ensure that we're able to utilize any federal dollars that do come either through reauthorization or through grant opportunities.
There's also additional corridor study that was added, US 3 Merrimack in Bedford. The CMAQ projects for the 2019 grant round, the 21 projects, there were 15 approved. Those were included. And we've also modified the CMAQ funding strategies to address some of the transit needs. So there are $2.2 million that will be moved to FTA for additional funding for transit needs. There's the $2.2 million that are flexed to other federal highway funding categories, which we mentioned earlier, and the balance goes to competitive grant rounds in the future, $6.5 million. And we've also removed the Madison-Conway bypass placeholder projects. There are 3 projects, the JT and U and the 11339 series. Moving into just a summary of the amendment to HB 1182. We'll just go through from a bullet item standpoint. So on page 8, item number 21, language as the legislature adopts a 2021 through 2030 10-year transportation plan and removes $44 million in bonding authority for the state aid bridge program. Basically, the project schedule for those projects were adjusted to align with the August 12th, 2019 version of the draft 10-year plan. That was our initial draft coming out of the prior. This is what we went to the public with, and that affects 35 municipal bridge projects. The schedules for those projects, basically, they're reverting to by removing the state aid bridge bonding portion of this, the municipal bridge schedules revert to the previous schedule that was shown through the hearing process. And the current program for state aid bridge program subscribed to 2028, and new bridges will be added in the next 10-year plan update.
So during the executive council or GASSET phase of the 10-year plan, there was a lot of discussion about how with the bonding environment being so favorable, maybe there was opportunities to bond some of our state-funded programs in addition to federal bonding to try and accelerate work. In light of uncertainty around revenue, we actually modified in the House phase the 10-year plan and showed bonding at a lower level because we wanted to make sure that we had certainty that in the future years there would be available revenue to pay that debt service. But in light of COVID and how that's changed the funding horizon, we are suggesting in this amendment that we do not bond the state aid bridge program at this time. We go back to the department's original proposal, which is advance the projects based on collected revenue. So that would be the 6.8 million annually. And then certainly in 2 years, when we update the 10-year plan, if our revenue outlook is more favorable, then we could bond at that time.
Page 8 and page 9, items 22 and number 25, Bedford Merrimack 16100 is modified to convert the mainline toll plaza in Bedford to all electronic tolling at the current location and delay construction funding 1 year. Page 8 and 9, number 23, Garvey Bonds deletes reference to Sarah Mildred Long Bridge and also deletes 2 references to the Connecticut River Bridges, Lebanon, Hartford, and Hinsdale, Brattleboro.
So previously, we've always outlined which projects we anticipate using Garvey bonds to fund. Because we have at different times either received grant funding or received additional federal dollars and not had to bond, we're asking that going forward, we have the authority to bond up to a certain level, but we don't prescribe which projects we're going to use those proceeds for because of some of the uncertainty around what federal funding may be available. So we still fully intend to complete all of the projects in the 10-year plan. While we have identified some candidates that could benefit from bonding, we want a little bit more flexibility and want to make sure that we're transparent that we may not bond the projects that currently are programmed with Garvey funds at this time.
On page 9, number 24, project in Plymouth 41583, advanced funding for all phases. Page 9, number 26, Merrimack exit 11 ramp toll removal project was added. On page 9 and 10, number 27, number 28, Turnpike System Increased Funding Authority for Central New Hampshire Turnpike to $954 million. And on page 10, number 29, this is the language that was added to provide more flexibility to the betterment program due to COVID-19 situation.
So with respect to the betterment program, the language that we've proposed is to provide the legislature with some flexibility. As you all are well aware, when the department needs to transfer funds within our budget, we have to go before both the fiscal committee and governor and council, but we are constrained by what's in the RSAs. And by statute, currently 3 cents of the road toll that is collected or the gas tax that is collected must flow into the betterment account. We are a little concerned that because of the reduction in traffic during the stay-at-home orders, the highway fund will not receive the same road toll receipts that we had forecast. And so we are proposing that in the statute, the betterment program be suspended to provide the fiscal committee and governor and council with that opportunity to move money into the department's operating budget if necessary to fund essential services, especially given how we're funded for winter maintenance. We wanted to make sure the legislature had that opportunity to move money if it was necessary. As a department, we have been advocating for federal assistance and a backstop for lost state revenues. If those dollars are forthcoming, and there has been 2 bills in the House that would provide some flexibility to use federal dollars for operations and maintenance, then this provision would not be needed. We will, of course, honor what's in the current approved budget. We're only going to need this flexibility and authority to transfer if we don't receive federal assistance. And the language that we have provided just provides this flexibility through the end of the current budget, for the end of this biennium. As we work on the budget for the next biennium, we would anticipate the full allocation of betterment dollars. But we have not modified the 10-year plan. We are very optimistic we'll get some federal assistance, and that's why we have kept all of the projects in the 10-year plan fully funded, anticipating that $24 million per year of betterment money being available. But this language is purely to give the legislature and governor and council some additional options when it comes to addressing any budget shortfalls that we may have.
Moving on to some of the summary charts that will be included in the 10-year plan book. This chart is the all funding chart, and it identifies various categories of investments and by fiscal year, and includes those investments by fiscal year for each category. The overall plan, the total, the investments are summarized at the bottom with percentages that you can see for the entire plan. And again, this is for all funding included in the plan. It's a $4 billion plan, and the current 10-year plan is around $3.7 billion. So there's some additional funds in this current plan. And the summaries is pavement around $82 million a year, averages, bridges around $95 million per year, transit and airports $633 million per year, and again $4 billion. And this is it's currently in draft form. This is a different view of the overall investment approach, and this shows overall color of money. This is a rainbow chart. Across the top, you'll see the various colors of money. On the left-hand side, federal highway. Moving to the right, major project Garvey funds, betterment funds. It also identifies the different modes, highway and bridge here in light blue, and other modes to the right in purple. And similarly, each fiscal year, you can see the investment made through that particular funding stream, and the overall total per fiscal year. And each one of these colors of money, each one of these types of funds come with their own rules and restrictions, and there's very limited ability to move money from one category to another from a investment standpoint. So they need to be used for the intended purpose in the rules that are identified in those funding categories. I do want to point out that 85% of the funding in this $4 billion plan is captured in the for use on roads and bridges. So this whole area here under this blue, that's 85% of the total, and that is for roads and bridges. And this is some of the commentary that we received as for this plan being car-centric in general, because most of the funding is for the highway and bridge mode. Some of the takeaways. This plan is similar to previous plans. It's level funded and financially constrained. We continue to investing in the preservation of the existing road and bridge network. We continue to address red list bridges. Most of the expansion is occurring on the turnpike system. Some of the outcomes over the next 5 years: road conditions continue to improve statewide. And the red list bridge total, we expect reductions to continue in that overall red list bridge total. Some of the concerns: we expect conditions to degrade over the long term due to the SB 367 road and bridge pledge ending in 2025. Remember, currently we're paying interest only through 2025, and it's around $23 million that's going to rural roads and bridges. That ends in 2025, and we begin paying all complete debt service, principal and interest on that $200 million TIFIA note. And we're also concerned about inflation and some of the recent price escalation eating away at our buying power. We still have some uncertainty regarding federal funding. We are in the last year of the FAST Act, and there's still uncertainty as to the next funding from the federal side. There is limited funding for other modes and transportation assets. And there are some concerns, again, regarding COVID impact on traffic revenue, both in the short term and the long term. So with that, we've wrapped up our presentation, and I will stop sharing.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Peter, and everyone for the presentation of the plan, and also thank you for the whole Gasset process. Having been at the first hearing in Dover, it seems like ages ago, but it was just last year. Followed it along. It's always an excellent process of working with the regional planning commissions and the funding issues, and just trying to look at how we can have a right-sized plan. And then I also appreciate the work to make the necessary adjustments given the uncertainty of the situation on revenues now. Let me begin by saying that I do think, just in terms of our protocol for the hearing, that we will hold off on questions on the specifics of the amendments to the 10-year plan that are in the 1182 amendment, because that should be part of the public hearing, and I will ask Transportation to come forward first at that part of the hearing. So I have a number of questions about the plan itself, and let me first ask my colleagues on the committee if they have any questions or comments about the presentation that we just had.
I just have a comment, Senator.
Senator Birdsall.
I just want to say thank you to the DOT. I know it's a lot of work, a lot of time has been taken into the 10-year plan, and a lot of nights with all the presentations. So I just want to say thank you for all the work that you've done.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, well, I have a few. Let me start with the uncertainties over funding. And I want to commend the commissioner for her leadership with the AASHTO group around the country that sent the letters and been advocating for increased funding for transportation needs, but particularly for operations, because we see with the decline of revenues with the gas road toll and other concerns that we want to make sure the department can operate, plow the streets, take care of the operations that must be done. And let's hope we have some good news about that. I guess part of my question would be that, let's say that we receive increased revenues in that form, and let's say that if, the HEROES Act is an extraordinary document, particularly in what it has under the categories of resilience for roadways and coastal areas, and you name it, lots of things that would be related to transportation. If the funding appears over the next year, would we be able to revisit that $40 million bonding that has been postponed and would there be a way for you to bring that forward as something that we could do if it looked like the revenues could sustain that, given the great conditions for bonding right now?
So certainly we could work with the legislature to amend the approved 10-year plan specific to that one item to give us the authorization to move forward with bonding of the state aid bridge program as was planned.
Mm-hmm.
The two bills that we're watching closely on the House side, there's the HEROES Act that would provide $15 billion to state DOTs as a backstop for our lost state revenue. The way that bill is drafted, the funds would only be available for federal aid eligible assets. So typically our federal highway dollars we can only spend on design and construction. So they have given us the flexibility in that particular bill to use those dollars for operations and maintenance as well, but it's still limited to the assets that would normally qualify for federal funding. And so that's why we're asking for some latitude in this amendment, that if we receive some federal funding to offset DOT expenses on our national highway system routes, then we would try to direct some of the state dollars that we collect to municipalities and to the other areas of our budget to make sure we can take care of those non-federal aid eligible roadways. So that would be our first priority, is to try and honor the approved budget that was passed by the legislature. And assuming that we could deliver on those commitments and honor what was approved by the legislature in the budget and signed by the governor, then we would look to see how additional dollars could be invested. And certainly we'd pursue the legislative authority to make sure that we didn't miss any opportunities to put those dollars to good use as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And given what's in the HEROES Act under the category of resilience, which has a lot of climate related issues along the coast, but also increased precipitation. I mean, just all the things that could impact our roadways in a changing climate, that just to clarify that if that money comes along, we already have in state statute the requirements that DOT take into account projected climate changes and so forth as you're looking at engineering and construction and projects along the coast, but elsewhere. Is that correct?
Yeah, and one of the things that we've been working on as a department is improving not only our inventory, but also our condition monitoring of all of our culverts and drainage structures. And we've been advocating for additional investment to make sure that we're improving those pieces of infrastructure and can handle some of the storm events that we have seen, a real increase in the frequency of storm events impacts. And so we are well positioned that should there be money specifically available for resilience, we could target some of those projects that have already been scoped and we're in the process of initiating.
Thank you. And would it surprise you that I have heard recently from a former chair of this committee, Senator Stiles, asking about the Route 1A project? And I see the funding in here for the bridge, and thank you, that's good. The questions that are arising out of the area along Route 1A is that of the phasing of that project. And I guess it is in 3 phases, and the local folks are just asking whether they're, what the possibilities are of trying to do it all at the same time.
Ocean Boulevard.
I believe you're referring to the Ocean Boulevard project, the roadway work along 1A rather than the bridge project.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's the bridge is
You'll
different.
notice in this version of the 10-year plan, we increased the funding for the design of the Ocean Boulevard project. That will allow us to accelerate the design and look more closely at both what level of investment we should be making in that particular project and then how best to sequence the construction. So I think the funding that we have available for design will help identify some of those issues.
Part of the funding too was they wanted, part of the request of the public hearing was to look at the whole corridor and do the design work for the whole corridor up to say concept development 30% stage. So, and then be able to figure out how much the whole project would cost, and maybe be able to address it in future 10-year plans, or develop the reasonable construction phasing around it.
Well, thank you. That seems like a really good way to go. And we have obviously time to consider looking forward what the strategy is going to be on the phasing and the funding of that. But that's obviously of great interest about how we're going to potentially save some money by how that is engineered and designed, and then how the construction is handled. I had another question about funding. You know, we've talked for several years in this process about the impact of Senate Bill 367 as the bonding, we shift towards the bonding, paying off the principal there and have less for the projects after 2025, and the potential impact that will have on the red listed bridges and other matters. So you are reaffirming here that while we are going to continue to make progress to 2025, that we are facing that issue of revenues in the ensuing years.
We are very pleased with our current statistics with respect to road and bridge condition. And we're showing that we'll continue to see improvement for the next 5 years. So we're very appreciative of the work that the legislature and the governor has done to fund both SB 367, but also when there was one-time revenue available, we were able to, through HB 1817, invest further in transportation. And so all of those commitments are really paying dividends. But yes, longer term, we have some concerns, specifically with the proceeds from SB 367 going to paying the debt service. And then just uncertainty around what our federal levels of funding are going to be and what cost escalation we might see long term. But over the next 5 years, you're going to have some of the best road and bridge condition that we've ever seen in recent history.
One more potential revenue issue. Can you update us at all on the issue of the bill on the toll credit sale?
So there was legislation put forward by Senator Shaheen concerning the sale of toll credits. That was previously not accepted, but then Senator Booker also brought forward very similar legislation. So we are optimistic that part of reauthorization, the language from those bills, will be incorporated. But we are waiting to see what's going to transpire. The House Transportation Infrastructure Committee, the leadership in that committee just introduced their version of reauthorization, which is the INVEST Act. And then on the Senate side, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee approved their reauthorization bill last year. So the next few weeks will be critical as we see how the two different bills are merged into one piece of reauthorization. But we're very optimistic that that sale of toll credits language will make it into the final bill.
And so there's no way to anticipate in this the potential revenue impact of that, but
well, we're being very conservative, assuming that we won't have that authority.
Well, if it passes, we won't count our chickens, but if it passes, then we'll have an opportunity.
If that was passed, then through the budget process, we could look at what we might realize in the sale of toll credits and what dollars might be available for investment through the budget.
Thank you. Another question I had is, we've had some conversation about the issues about bonding and then having to pay out of general funds, and the governor wisely, I guess it was 3 projects in the capital budget that were delayed. Do those delays have any impact on the 10-year highway plan about what you're capable of doing because of the impacts potentially of the capital budget?
No, our capital budget projects are not included in the 10-year plan. The capital budget items that were that's related to more facilities as well as our equipment. And so those are separate. So we haven't incorporated anything that was approved in HB 25 in the 10-year plan.
I think you maybe misunderstood my question. Hard to interrupt. I understand that it's not part of the 10-year plan, but I was just wondering whether the inability to spend those monies would have any impact on your ability to get any of these projects done.
No.
Because or whatever else.
They're completely separate sources of funds and separate initiatives.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And let's see if that exhausts at this point. Let me just say as a general comment, and we'll get to this in the hearing on the amendment. As you know, there's great concern about what's happening with the road toll and the 12% that goes to municipalities, and we're all anticipating such difficulty for municipalities on the revenue side because of the COVID-19 crisis. And it is really commendable what the department has tried to do. And I know you personally have put an enormous effort in your actions at the federal level to make sure that we can do things to help the local municipalities out with the roads and bridges through the fundings that funding gets passed through, whether it's through 367 or whether it's through the road toll. So we'll have an opportunity to talk about those particulars later, but I did want to mention it in the context of the 10-year plan, because it does have such an impact on our municipalities. And it's not just the getting the roads done, but this is actually, of course, the life that people can get to work, that we have safe transportation, efficient transportation, and so forth. So if there are any other questions that have come up from committee members in the meantime. Well, thank you again so much. And I did ask by an email during the hearing that perhaps you could send that presentation to the committee members after the hearing. It's a nice summary and it might be helpful to us as we communicate to our colleagues and our constituents what is in the 10-year plan.
Certainly, we'd be happy to do that. And we also post all of our presentations to our website, so they'll be available to your constituents as well.
Well, thank you. So I guess at this point, Sonia and Monica, we will close the presentation. And if we have to transfer back anything technologically.
I think I'm all set. So I'll just have you open the hearing on House Bill 11822. I mean, I did not say the right number, 1182.
Yes, I will open the hearing on House Bill 1182, and I will establish a committee to study road usage by non-traditional motor vehicles, and I will ask Senator Birdsell to please introduce House Bill 1182.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Regina Birdsell, State Senator for District 19, which encompasses the towns of Derry, Hampstead, and Windham. And I'm introducing House Bill 1182, which is an act establishing a commission to study road usage by non-traditional motor vehicles. And the prime sponsor was Representative Packard.
Well, thank you. And are there any questions from members of the committee? Senator Birdsell, this issue is very familiar to all of us on Senate Transportation. We have wrestled with the issue of trying to provide access to the roadways in the North Country for the Ride the Wild and other purposes, so people could get off the trails and get some facilities that are nearby.
Yep.
And then, of course, we've also heard in extensive hearings last year and the year before about concerns of residents with this program and the age of drivers of these vehicles and adult accompaniment. And so this is really an effort to harness all those interests, and as we see in the duties of the committee, to really have an opportunity to bring everybody together and make some good recommendations to us. Is that more or less what you see here?
I do, and I also, if you recall, I'm hoping that they actually add some of the, remember the hearings that we've had about using state roads to travel with some of these off-road vehicles. So I hope they are able to get a little bit into that as well.
As part of their duties on line 30 to get right at that. And I'm sure that given the folks who are on it, they will get sure the public has a chance to bring forward anything that concerns them about it.
Yeah, it'll be nice. It'll be nice to get some clarification and some solutions.
And I know that Representative Packard has really worked hard on this, and I appreciate his bringing the bill forward and our opportunity here. The chair of House Transportation and I really thought this, even in these circumstances, this was an important bill to move forward. So thank you, Senator Birdsell. And is there anyone who wishes to testify on 1182? Monica?
So Senator Waters, I have up next to speak on House Bill 1182, Director of the Department of Motor Vehicles, Elizabeth Bilecki, but Representative McGuire has her hand raised. Would you like me to call on her?
Yes, please.
Representative McGuire, you should be able to speak. You should be unmuted.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a co-sponsor of this bill, and my concern is not necessarily OHRVs in the North Country. I'm concerned about people using golf carts and similar sorts of vehicles to get around in the rest of the state. I had a constituent request clarification of, what if you get a golf cart or some other low-speed vehicle, what roads could you take it on? What kind of licensing do you need? What kind of inspections do you need? That's a problem for many of my constituents, and I hope the commission will be able to look into these things and give us some sensible answers. It's not just the North Country that cares about these vehicles.
Thank you very much, Representative McGuire. I will note, I gave the wrong line number before, but on page 2, line 2, it says all terrain vehicles and golf carts. And as you note, I mean, pardon me for speaking exclusively of the North Country, but there's no delimitation geographically in this bill. So wherever those golf carts are, we're going to study them. And are there any questions from the committee of Representative McGuire? Thank you for your testimony.
Okay, so next I will call on Director Elizabeth Bilecki. So just give me 1 second. Director, you should be able to speak.
Good morning, Senator Waters. Good morning, members of the committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, good morning, welcome.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Elizabeth Bilecki, Director of the Division of Motor Vehicles. And I think you made my job really easy today because Senator Waters, you really stated what my concerns were with unconventional vehicles and really the need for this study commission. Over the past few years, I've had numerous conversations with many constituents of yours or even members of both the House and the Senate, including Representative McGuire. And there's really no good or clear answer to some of the needs out there, needs or wants of our residents, and also needs to keep some of these vehicles operating in a safe manner in safe spots in the state. So I think looking at the approach to create a study commission is the right way to deal with that, because as you can see, based on the makeup of the proposed makeup of the commission, we'll have a number of subject matter experts that can help us determine how New Hampshire really wants to address the issue of unconventional vehicles on the road. So with that, I fully support this bill, and I appreciate you taking the time to look into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Well, hearing none. It's going to be
Senator Waters, my apologies, Senator. I do notice that DOT has their hand raised. I don't know if they have.
Yeah, I just hadn't finished I wasn't closing the hearing. I was just thanking Director Bilecki.
I wasn't sure if perhaps never mind, my apologies.
So thank you, Director. And Monica, who's next?
DOT has their hand raised. Would you like me to allow them to speak?
Please do.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. This is Victoria Sheehan, Commissioner at DOT. And I would echo some of the comments from our colleague, Director Bilecki at DMV. DOT is very much in favor of HB 1182. We have shared some of the concerns regarding the safety of non-highway vehicles using our roadways. We really believe that this commission is needed to fully understand all of the different issues around OHRV use. Certainly the expansion of OHRVs has provided tremendous economic opportunity, especially in the rural areas of the state. But we do want to make sure that as we expand those opportunities, we are keeping the citizens that use our trails and roadway network safe. And so we very much support this legislation so that we can work with the legislature to make sure that we are putting in place rules that will protect public safety.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Are there questions from members of the committee of the commissioner? All right, hearing none. Monica, is there anyone else who has signed up or is raising their hand, or is there anyone who wishes to speak who hasn't been called on?
Yes, I have Representative Cloutier to speak. Representative.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, yes, this is Representative John Cloutier. I'm calling in by phone. I can't get through via Zoom.
Well, glad you made it, Representative.
Okay.
So this is just on 1182.
Right, 11, and specifically the provision of the 10-year plan. I do not want to comment on the rest of the bill because I'm not very as familiar. And I do want to say I do support the 10-year plan language in House Bill 1182.
Excuse me, Representative. We're just doing 1182. We haven't introduced the amendment yet. So
okay, all right.
Good, hold on just a little bit.
Okay, sure. I'm sorry about that, but I will refrain from comment. So when we get to the amendment, I'd like to speak to that just briefly.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Waters.
Okay, so Senator Waters, that is the last that I have for people signed up to speak just on the bill, House Bill 182, 1182. If anyone else would like to speak, they could raise their hand. If they're calling from a phone, they can dial *9.
Well, thank you. Do you see anyone?
I do not see anyone, Senator.
All right, then I will close the hearing on House Bill 1182, and I will open the hearing on Amendment 1366S. I will ask Senator Birdsell to take the gavel while I introduce this amendment. And I'm Senator David Waters from Dover, and introducing Amendment 1366S. I thought that it would be helpful for me to go through the sections of this amendment to elucidate what we have done and putting together and which House and Senate bills by number were incorporated into this. Sections 1 and 2 include House Bill 1128. This adds deaf or hard of hearing to the medical conditions that may be indicated on a driver's license or non-driver's identification. House Bill 1517 on roadable aircraft is sections 11 to 39. This came out of the House committee 20-0 and on a voice vote. Then we have House Bill 2020 as amended in the House Public Works Committee. It did not get to the floor in the House, but we worked off of what the committee had finally presented as its amendment. And as we will further discuss, removed authority of DOT to bond up to $44 million for a state bridge. It further amended to add flexibility for betterment and block grant aid, and a further amendment to strike language that would have moved the Bedford Toll Plaza to near exit 10. We also have Senate Bill 435, which references the Hudson Career Technical Education Center funding. This passed the Senate committee 6-0 and a voice vote here. I thought it was appropriate to include this bill to shift the funding in the capital budget for the CTE Center, mostly taking care of the funding that was going to be in the next year of the capital budget by finding lapsed funds. And thank you to Senator D'Alessandro and Senator Carson for their hard work on this to make sure that great project can be completed. And I thought it was appropriate to have it here because Public Works in the House handles the capital budget, and it also handles the 10-year highway plan. So I thought it was appropriate to have that in this amendment. We also have Senate Bill 446 for the Manchester Airport Transportation Company. It's enabling language to bring the airport in compliance with federal statutes so it can receive federal dollars. Senate Bill 612, agreements on licensing with foreign governments. Senate Bill 613 about crash data provisions to DOT. Senate Bill 614 about DOT procedures for property leasing. Senate Bill 649, one of several pieces of legislation directed toward public safety that arose out of the motorcycle crash last year. This deals with commercial driver's licenses and driving under the influence while driving certain commercial motor vehicles. Senate Bill 653 on counterfeit airbags, another timely and important public safety provision. Senate Bill 654, display of revoked licenses, another essential public safety provision that needs to be done now. Senate Bill 658, federal requirements for motor carriers, similar reasoning. And Senate Bill 725, we needed a language fix on the collection of tolls to deal with essentially scofflaws who are using our kind of a gap in our laws to get multiple different registrations. So if they've gone through the tolls without paying under a previous one. Let me also note that we may be considering in executive session, and I will ask the commissioner about this, that she had a discussion with the contractors and everyone else over the changes to the, the betterment language and potential suspension there, and very grateful for that. And, among all participated, but there is a question about whether we could clarify what was the intent of the commissioner as a result of that conversation. And I will ask the commissioner about that language. And then finally, we have a request to incorporate a revised version of Senate Bill 656. This may be recalled by the committee, Senator Khan's bill that dealt with asking that when the DOT undertakes a project, that it look into the potential economic impacts on businesses that might be affected because of access and parking issues. So again, I will bring this language up a little later on when the commissioner is back before us. But the language here has been reduced to just saying that there would be a consideration of parking and access issues in DOT projects. Members of the committee, that is what we will be considering in Amendment 1366, and I will be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Are there any questions from the committee? Well, I just have a question, and Senator Waters, you and I discussed it a little bit earlier regarding the Boston Regional Airport Director in the queue to testify or have questions asked? Monica, do we know?
I don't know.
Okay. So Senator Waters, you and I had discussed a little bit about the Boston Regional Airport and the TNC versus the taxi. Do you want to answer that question, or should we?
Yes, I will. I'd be happy to speak to it.
Okay.
what we need to do in this section is to bring us into compliance with federal law, which wants to have an equal playing field between taxi cab drivers and TNC drivers, you know, your Uber, your Lyfts, other vehicles. That it's important for equity there, that when passengers are dropped off, if an airport is charging taxi cab riders a fee for access to the airport, that it is only fair that TNC passengers also have that, and that's what federal statute requires. There is some change that is coming in federal statute about just how that is done. And I did want to note then that on page 2 of the amendment 1366, lines 27 through 29, and I think this clarifies what you're asking, Senator Birdsall. Except that an airport that is federally obligated may charge a TNC fee, as may be amended from time to time, which is not greater than a fee applied to a taxi cab service. And my understanding of the intent of this legislation and the intent of this committee will be to say that that would be in compliance with federal guidelines on how and who is charged for this, so that they would not be charging anyone more than what the federal statute allows.
Okay, so just a follow-up. So what I'm hearing and what I think we agree with is that if taxi cabs are only being charged a fee for departures, then TNCs will only be charged for departures.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think that that is the intent as we consider in the committee. And I suggest that it may be useful on the floor next Tuesday for you to make that statement, so we have a record of the Senate of intent on this piece of legislation.
Will do. Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I will move back into this seat virtually as chair. And I know, Monica, that we have, I believe the DOT is going to come back first to answer our questions about the issues there. So thank you.
Awesome. I will go ahead and guys, you should be able to speak.
As we articulated earlier during our presentation on the 10-year plan, DOT fully supports this amendment and is very appreciative that some of the Senate bills that were extremely important to us have been incorporated. And we're happy to answer any questions that you might have on any aspect of the amendment that pertains to the department.
Members of the committee. Well, thank you again, Commissioner. And I mentioned before the call that you had with the contractors and others, and I received this morning a suggestion about whether you would be amenable to a sentence here that would clarify your intent. And I believe that we had this sent to you, but I will read it for the record and just to have your opinion on it. It would add the sentence, well, you know, the current amendment has to meet department operational needs and to further reduce the betterment funded projects in the 10-year plan in proportion to available projected revenues. Then the potential addition would be the suspension is only in place to the degree it is necessary and that the fund is fully restored as soon as the diversion is no longer necessary.
So, Senator, I do believe this language is redundant. If you chose to accept this proposed language, certainly the department wouldn't have a problem with that. I think it just reiterates what we have already articulated in the earlier part of this paragraph, we have made it clear that we're only going to reduce the funds in proportion to available projected revenue. So it's not our intent to suspend the betterment program entirely. As I explained earlier during our 10-year plan presentation, by statute, 3 cents of the road toll or gas tax that we collect must flow into the betterment account. What we're doing is suspending that so that we would have the authority to work with the fiscal committee and governor and council to move some funding from the betterment account into other line items in our operating budget should it be absolutely necessary. And we would go forward and present to the fiscal committee our recommendation on what the transfer amount would be based on our actual revenue. And so, I want to stress it is not our intent to eliminate the betterment projects that are funded with the 3 cents. And this would only be for the second year of the biennium. It's only for fiscal year 2021. And so certainly if we were to transfer money into other accounting lines, and then for some reason those funds were not expended, then the funding would flow back into the highway fund surplus and would be available for programming in future years. So certainly we don't have we're not opposed to the suggested amendment to this language. Like I said, I think it's redundant, but it would further reinforce the department's position, which is very much that we want to complete all of the betterment work that has been approved and is currently programmed in this draft 10-year plan that's before you. We just want to make sure that we're giving the legislature and governor and council some flexibility to meet any budget shortfalls.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner. As I said earlier, I appreciate so much you're really trying to take the lead on providing language flexibility so that you can do everything that can be done to help the municipalities out and account for potential receipt of federal. If I may, I'll turn to what Senator Khan has proposed. And again, I'm sorry this is last minute, and I believe I emailed you, forwarded this to you, but I will just read what he wants to, what he would like to do. It is familiar from Senate Bill 656, but the relevant language is business impacts, Department of Transportation. For projects exceeding 5 million, the Department of Transportation shall include in its engineering and design how to mitigate effects on entry, access, or parking.
So once again, Senator, we are not opposed to this language, but we do believe it is redundant. It is already a part of our design process that for every project, irrespective of size or dollar figure, we do look at the impacts on adjacent property, especially because we want to have good traffic management during construction. We look at the challenges with access to or for abutters, as well as any parking adjacent to the facility that we're working on. So certainly, if the committee feels that that language would be reassuring to constituents and you want to include it, we're not opposed to it, but we wanted to reassure you it's already part of our process.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. That's much appreciated. Are there other questions from committee members on the portion of this amendment 1366 that is related to the 10-year highway plan?
Senator Waters,
yeah.
I actually have a comment. I forwarded that information that on the fiscal committee, legislative fiscal committee, to Josh, and he thought that the language that we got from the organization didn't really do what they thought. So he gave me some language that might better fit. I don't know, but it's something we may want to look at in executive committee or executive session.
Thank you very much. We will do so.
Okay.
Any other questions from the committee? Well, thank you again, Commissioner, and it's been a long, strange trip, as the Grateful Dead would say, but here we are. We'll get the 10-year highway plan done. So Monica, I don't know if it would be appropriate to bring, I think you had Senator Gaida and then perhaps Representative Cloutier.
I can do that. I also have Director Bilecki from the DMV signed up to speak in support of the amendment. Would you like me to call her?
Yes, please, if you would.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning again, Senator Waters, members of the committee. I think, again, you've done a great job summarizing some of the provisions of the amendment that are related to the Department of Safety as well as the DMV. We are fully supporting the amendment as well, and I know Lieutenant Player is also listening in. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Most of the provisions related to the department and the DMV in the amendment are either requested by us or provisions that we've worked with House or Senate members, as well as the DOT on providing the language for. So we fully support that. There are a couple of critical items in here for us. Some of them, as Senator Waters stated, relate to strengthening our commercial driver license laws in light of what happened in Randolph almost exactly a year ago now, but also some provisions that will allow us to join the state-to-state agreement or state-to-state system that will allow us to be more efficient in exchanging of motor vehicle records with other states. So with that, I'll stop and I'll just be available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions on those provisions, those safety provisions for the Director? Questions from the committee? Well, Director, let me say I appreciate so much the way the department responded to Randolph and the really terrific study that was done very quickly in response to it. And from that came these bills. And I'm glad that even in these circumstances, we can ensure public safety. And I will particularly note that one of the ironies of COVID-19 has been the increase in fatalities on roadways across the country. So I think that the crash data provisions here, unfortunately, seem even more necessary in the current circumstances. So thanks to you and the department for the report and for bringing these forward. Monica.
Okay, so I have Lieutenant Player up. Would you like me to call on him next? Lieutenant, you should be unmuted. Lieutenant Player. Lieutenant Player. Okay, it appears he's having some sort of difficulties. I can call back on him if you'd like. We can call on Senator Gaida.
If you would, please, Monica, and let's make sure that Lieutenant Player can join us as soon as he is able.
Absolutely. Okay. Senator Gaida. Senator Gaida, you should be unmuted.
I think he's still muted, Monica.
Yeah, Senator Gaida, you have to allow permission for me to unmute you. There should be a button that pops up. Okay.
I think we have it.
Hey, Bob. Excuse me, Senator Gaida.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Members of the committee, thank you for the privilege of testifying today. For the record, my name is Bob Gaida, Senator from District 2, one of whose towns is the town of Plymouth, a very important community in this area of the state, obviously for a number of reasons. I asked your support for item 24 on the amendment. This would resolve an issue that is concerning. One of the major roads in Plymouth is Highland Street. It was slated to be worked upon this year. And in the process of revamping the 10-year plan that goes on, in that midst of that, the town manager of Plymouth was in fact changed, retired, and a new one was appointed. And in the turnover, the need to participate to support the project was not made clear, and so it slid. Highland Street is extremely important. Upon it, you find the elementary school, the high school, Spear Memorial Hospital, the fire department, and of course, Plymouth State University, a number of buildings and structures relative to the university. It's in a significant state of disrepair. What this amendment does is return this fix for a cost of about 1.47 million to its original place so that we can move forward without waiting another 3 years. Interesting to note that the town of Plymouth has already invested just shy of $500,000 into this project already. And so I would ask the committee's approval for item 24 and allow the town of Plymouth to move ahead with the repairs as originally planned. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, Senator Gaida, it's in the plan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your support and the members of the committee. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Next, I will call on Representative Horgan.
Oh, thank you very much. And I apologize for the 10-year highway plan not being passed yesterday. I'm Representative Timothy Horgan, representing the towns of Durham and Madbury, and Durham yesterday was hosted the first New Hampshire House session held since 1819 outside of Concord, and I was very proud of that, but not pleased with some of the things that happened, including the demise of the 10-year highway plan, which passed almost unanimously through committee and is, I think, something that everybody in the House actually supports. It's rare similar bills come every 2 years. They've never been particularly controversial. So I certainly thank you for reviving the 10-year highway plan, because if we tried to proceed without one, that would be just really inexcusable. And so I thank the Senate committee for saving the 10-year highway plan, and hopefully my House, and I'm sure I'm sure it will be passed when it comes back to the House on which I believe is on June 30th. There's also another bill, HB 1667. I can't remember whether that was in the long list of bills which are included, but that's about driver's license for drug court participants. And so that's also another bill that would have passed yesterday if not for the procedural votes going in what my opinion was the wrong way. So anyway, I thank you for saving the 10-year highway plan, and I feel a little bit embarrassed that I was called on before Senator Cloutier, because he's put his heart and soul into this 10-year highway plan, and I think every other 10-year highway plan since we've had a 10-year highway plan. Anyway, so thank you very much. Thanks to the committee, and thank you for saving the 10-year highway plan, as I've said about 4 times already. So thanks.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any questions from members of the committee of Representative Horgan? Let me note that House Bill 1667 is not before this committee.
Okay, thanks.
No.
Wasn't sure where it went, but thanks.
Monica.
So Lieutenant Blair is back, so I'm going to try to bring him back in before working my way down the list. Okay. Oops. I'm sorry, Senator. There we go.
All right, hopefully you can hear me now.
We can, perfect.
All right, fantastic, thank you. I apologize for the issues earlier. I think Chairman Waters introduced the bill. Similar to Director Malecki, I'm here to answer some questions. I think Chairman Waters really covered it quite well, that most of the issues that were, most of the items affecting Department of Safety were per our request. A lot of them were in light of the Randolph tragedy. There are some changes we've asked for in order to get into compliance with Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. And there's certain language in there for new programs that have come in place, such as the driver training to get a driver's license, that this makes it much easier to adopt those federal guidelines. So I'm here to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Questions from members of the committee of the lieutenant? Lieutenant, thank you for your service and keeping our roads safe. And I'm really glad we're going to be able to get these essential public safety items included in 1366. So thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Next is Representative Cloutier.
Okay, hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the Transportation Committee. I am State Representative John Cloutier from Claremont, Chair of the House Public Works and Highways Committee, and I'm here today to testify in behalf of the amendment to House Bill 1182, Amendment 1366S, and more specifically in the amendment section on the 10-year Transportation Improvement Plan.
Unknown caller.
Okay. Am I still on? Okay. Hello?
Yes,
All right.
we can still hear you, Representative.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you very much.
No worries.
As Representative Horrigan mentioned, the 10-year plan, we didn't suspend the rules yesterday on House Bill 2020. So obviously now this is the only piece of legislation that incorporates the 10-year plan now. And I'm strong support of it. And I realize originally the House Public Works and Highways Committee, after 2 public hearings, 5 work sessions, voted to approve the House Bill 2020 as amended on March 11th. This is just before the pandemic took full force and the State House was closed. So unfortunately, the full House was never able to get a chance to vote on it as we had hoped in late March. And then we couldn't suspend the rules yesterday. And I appreciate the language changes because obviously the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting state revenues, including highway and turnpike funds. So I think we have to be a little bit more flexible, especially in receiving any extra federal aid in regard to the pandemic. So I do support this amendment, especially in regards to the 10-year transportation plan, and I urge this committee to unanimously pass this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Cloutier. Questions from members of the committee? Well, Representative Cloutier, I want to thank you for making our job so easy. The House Public Works Committee always does an extraordinary job on this, and you got to us that amendment, which became the basis of what we have in your highway plan. And I know you and I have worked over the last several weeks to make sure that both parties and both bodies are supportive and aware of have been doing with this. I hope that you heard some of the earlier conversation about a couple of small language additions that we may make that have perhaps are redundant and do not have any objections from DOT, but they have come up kind of at the last minute. But I just wanted to make sure in this venue that you had heard that. And if not, I will communicate to you, of course, what we are working on in executive session at the conclusion of it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I trust your judgment, and the commissioner sounded like she didn't have any objections, so that's fine. If you need to add additional language, but if you don't, I mean, I don't know. It's your call. I will trust you. I don't think I will have a problem with any additional language changes myself. And obviously, when it gets the full House on June 30th, there'll be the motion to concur, and certainly I would support the motion to concur.
Well, thank you again, Representative. And
okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
So I had Representative Carol McGuire to speak in support of the amendment. I know she spoke earlier. I don't see her anymore. If you are on the phone, Representative, you can hit *9 to raise your hand. but I will go on to the next person, and I have Sam Bosfield. And if Representative McGuire, you are on, I will come back to you. Sam, you should be unmuted.
Believe I am. Can you all hear me?
Yes, welcome, Mr. Bassfield, to the committee.
Thank you very much. I am Sam Bosfield. I'm the CEO of Samson Sky, which is a flying car company in the Western United States. And I'm speaking in support of the amendment, particularly the section dealing with registration of flying cars. Frankly, when I was first approached as an industry stakeholder regarding the language, I met this with trepidation and concern, as strict regulations could kill a fledgling industry such as this very easily. I have since grown to admire New Hampshire's form of representation, and you have made a convert out of me, so my hat is off to you. I'm very happy to support the legislation as written, and I'm very thankful for the leadership that sponsor Representative Smith and co-sponsor Chairman Waters have provided, along with the House Transportation Committee and the various state agencies that have been involved in the writing of the proposed legislation. As an aside, I see the working state government of New Hampshire as something which I thought had been lost to us. So despite the pandemic and the troubles it has caused you all, again, my hat is off to you as a state. This amendment's language, I feel, is a testimony to pretty much the forthright way of life that New Hampshire represents. And if my input today has anything, it boils down to this: the day we have dreamed of for decades, I think, is finally here. We have flying cars for real for the first time. And I feel it's fitting that New Hampshire be the first state to welcome that future and help enable that future. Samson Sky is producing a flying sports car with over about 1,250 reservations, I think now, across all 50 states, including New Hampshire. And we may have started on the West Coast, but our hearts and minds are with you today in support of 1366S. So thank you for the chance to speak. I know my time is short. If you had any particular questions, I'd be honored to answer them to the best of my ability, but I just wanted to thank you.
Well, thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you again. And really, this is I'm a co-sponsor of this bill, but the testimony to the great work of Representative Smith, the prime sponsor of this, and New Hampshire is always open to new technology when it's brought here safely. And we hope this is a good provision to move forward with, and appreciate your coming before us this morning. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Next, I'm going to call on Paul Warsowich. I'm not sure if I said that right, so my apologies. Paul, you should be unmuted.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Paul Waswich. You said it, and it's correctly pronounced. And I'm from Gallagher, Callahan, and Gatrell, and representing the Aggregate Manufacturers Association. We support the 10-year highway plan as amended, and all the good work that the Department of Transportation has performed on getting it to this point. The language that we just want to include, even though it may be redundant, is to that section on the betterment where the suspension is only in place to the degree, if you know, as you read it, as you explained it in your testimony to the committee. The reason we're sensitive to this is I've been around too long, is that when we passed the Betterment Fund back in the 1990s, we had a very struggle to pass it, but we had to make a commitment to making sure that the money was spent on roads and bridges. And that is why when you see in the law that the department is to give a report back I believe every year on where the money is spent. So it was that legislative history. It may be redundant, but and it may be better language that Josh may have, but that was brought to my attention. We want to make sure, and I know it may be bootstrapped, but we really would appreciate having that in there because it goes back to back to the 90s where we had a guarantee that money was going to roads and bridges, because we got, that was a commitment we made back to Governor Gregg, then Senate President Bill Bartlett, Speaker Scammon. So that's the intent of the language.
Well, thank you so much. And are there any questions from members of the committee? Well, thank you again. And I'm sure you heard the earlier conversations on this, and we'll have some discussion of it in executive session. Thank you.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did, Mr. Chairman. And again, I just wanted to give you that perspective of why it's brought it up again, going back to the 1990s. Thank you.
Okay, Monica.
Next, I'm calling on Stephen Workman. Stephen, you should be unmuted.
Good morning, Senator Waters and members of the committee. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Excellent. My name is Stephen Workman, and I'm the Director of Transport New Hampshire, a statewide organization that advocates for transportation options with emphasis on public transit, walking, and cycling. My purpose today is to support the inclusion and adoption of Section 21 of the State 10-Year Transportation Improvement Plan in the proposed amendment to HB 1182. Further, I ask you to address deficiencies in the plan by increasing funding for public transit, active transportation, and overall multimodal network development. I, like many of you, attended multiple public hearings throughout the state during the fall GASSET process. I appreciated the effort and quality of that process, as well as the extensive work that DOT with support from the regional planning commissions put into development of the 10-year plan. My concern is what I believe to be a disconnect between what I heard during those public hearings and the plan now before you. If you reviewed the one-page summary of public input from the GASSET hearings, you saw that 229 comments related to expanding transportation options were received. The closest number after that were 100 comments about improving safety, comments that were often in connection with transportation options, bike ped safety, safe and secure access to public transit, etc. All other transportation priorities received less than 70 comments. This should have sent a clear message that the current plan is not achieving the public's priorities. However, as the transmittal process unfolded from GASSET to the governor and finally to the legislature, that message appears to have been clouded. In its transmission letter to the governor, GASSET acknowledged that the need to expand travel options was heard most during the public process. However, it stopped short of including any recommendations to the governor and legislature to create new funding streams or otherwise address those expressed needs. This was an unfortunate missed opportunity. In turn, the governor's transmittal letter described the public participation process, but was silent regarding the top priorities expressed by the public. In fact, the letter concluded that, and I quote, "This is a financially constrained plan that identifies and addresses the transportation priorities that best align with the public input received by citizens, regional planning commissions, and transportation stakeholders." I respectfully disagree, as I do not believe that the current plan makes substantial progress toward maintaining and expanding transportation options, particularly for public transit. In support of my position, I ask you to consider the following. New Hampshire's senior population will nearly double between 2015 and 2040. Seniors have very different transportation needs. AARP estimates 20% of the Americans over 65 don't drive. This equates to nearly 75,000 non-driving seniors by 2030. The best available estimate of annual transit trips needed to allow these seniors to age in place with dignity is 1.9 million trips in 2020, rising to 2.8 million trips by 2030 and 3.05 million trips by 2040. Volunteer driver programs will be critical components of meeting growing transit need for seniors and individuals with disabilities. Currently, only 197 of 244 communities have VDP service, and the largest of these programs meets approximately 13% of the estimated need. Resources will be needed to expand this capacity. The draft statewide strategic transit assessment completed in 2019 identifies need for close to $65 million over 10 years to meet rural transportation needs and modernize technology of existing systems for efficiency and safety. New Hampshire's public transit operators face revenue gaps in the millions of dollars just to maintain the existing services and handle growth in federally mandated services under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Federal Transit Administration funding has not kept pace with growth in cost, as much as Federal Highway Administration funding has not kept pace with inflationary pressures. And then finally, New Hampshire lags far behind other states in state support for public transportation. The national average per capita investment of state funding for public transit in 2017 was $58.47. The median state investment was $5.45 per capita, made by North Dakota, a rural state with about half of New Hampshire's population. New Hampshire invested 51 cents per capita. I know that every elected official, from the governor to the members of the legislature, care about people. I know that you are trying to maintain a complicated balance between available resources and needs. There is no single solution that will solve these problems, but we must do better for our citizens. I urge you to consider how your leadership today can position New Hampshire to address these challenges head on. We need more state funds to be invested in a transportation system that serves all users, and must align our transportation goals with priorities in other areas such as economic development, land use, and health and well-being. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Your testimony, perhaps you have sent that letter and an email to the committee as well.
Yes, I have. I sent that along, so you'll have those remarks.
Thank you. And are there questions from members of the committee? I certainly know that we have heard and share your concerns, and that it was good to see some help provided through the CARES Act. And I know that the HEROES Act has substantial new funding for other transportation systems, you know, buses and so forth. And I acknowledge the challenges that you outline and what you presented to us. So seeing no other questions or comments, thank you very much for coming before the committee today.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kevin Colburn. Mr. Colburn, you should be.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you so much for your time and for the opportunity for me to testify this morning. My name is Kevin Colburn, and I represent Terrafugia Incorporated. I'm testifying in support of Amendment 1366S, specifically the section pertaining to roadable aircraft on page 10, beginning on line 30. This language began as House Bill 1517, which was voted ought to pass with amendment by the House on March 11th of this year. I'd also like to thank the prime sponsor of HB 1517, Representative Steve Smith, as well as the co-sponsor, Senator David Waters. I would also like to thank both the chair of House Transportation, Representative George Sykes, and the chair of Senate Transportation, Senator Waters, for their work in incorporating HB 1517 into Amendment 1366S. Since 2006, Terrafugia has been developing the Transition, a roadable aircraft that we also like to call the first practical flying car. We currently conduct flight testing out of a hangar at the Nashua Airport, where we have also created the foundation for a sales center and a customer care center. When we start making production vehicles, we would like our first customers to purchase and operate them in New Hampshire. Now, the pilot of a Transition can convert the vehicle from flying to driving in less than 60 seconds with the push of a button. We have applied proven automotive safety technology to small aircraft design, such as four-wheel disc brakes, driver and passenger airbags, pre-tensioning seat belts, and the safety cage structural design. The Transition will also have a full vehicle parachute system. It will drive like a car, fly like a plane, and provide customers with a new dimension of freedom and flexibility. Amendment 1366S creates a mechanism for inspection and registration of products like ours and like Sam's, paving the way for customers to have a smooth and logical experience while preserving the state's interest in keeping its airways and its roadways safe. We are very grateful that New Hampshire has the vision to be the first state in the country to enact such legislation, and we very much support it. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank you all for your time this morning, and I respectfully ask that you vote ought to pass on Amendment 1366S. Thank you very much, and happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Colburn. And you keep, you know, praising us for being first in the nation. And I was thinking that maybe it means some of the presidential candidates next time have a new way to get around to our remote communities, huh?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yes, I like it. I like it.
Are there questions from members of the committee? Well, seeing none, thank you very much for testifying today.
You're welcome, Senator. Thank you so much.
Monica.
Okay, next I'm going to call on Keith Ammon. Mr. Ammon, you should be unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, welcome to the Senate Transportation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mr. Chair and members of the committee and everyone else on the call. My name is Keith Ammon. I live in New Boston. And following our previous speaker, Kevin, I'm here to testify in favor of the section in Amendment 1366. It's section 19 about roadable aircraft. I represent a company called PAL-V, and it's spelled PAL-V, and that stands for Personal Air and Land Vehicle. It's a Dutch company headquartered in the Netherlands. The roadable aircraft that they have been building since the early aughts is a three-wheeled vehicle. It looks like a helicopter, but it flies more like an airplane. It's something called a gyroplane. And if you want to see more, you can go to pal-v-nh.com and you can see more about it. The language from this amendment, the section of the amendment comes from House Bill 1517, again put in by Representative Stephen Smith, and I'd like to thank him and Senator Waters and all the other co-sponsors. We had a informational section on the industry back at the Manchester airport in January, and we invited state reps and senators. We had members of the Department of Transportation, Department of Aeronautics, someone from the state police came. So we had a stakeholder informational meeting, and I'll have to say people stuck around an hour after that meeting because they were so excited about the subject. A roadable aircraft, just to be very brief, it's somewhat analogous to a seaplane. A seaplane has floats and it can land on a lake. The difference is that a roadable aircraft, even though it's two modes of transportation, it can only land and take off at an airstrip. So if that clears that up for you. But what this bill does is it allows for the registration, inspection, and a fee structure to have an aircraft, a highly complex machine, be able to park and drive onto a public roadway and then obey all the rules of the public roadway. So as previous speakers stated, New Hampshire will be the first to do this. And if you witnessed the SpaceX launch on Saturday, you know how new modes of transportation kind of inspire people to look forward to the future. And New Hampshire can be the first to enable this new mode of transportation. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank you for your time this morning and respectfully ask that you vote all to pass on 1366, the amendment, excuse me, and advance New Hampshire as forward thinking in the nation. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. Are there questions from the committee? Well, hearing none. Monica, how many more people do we have?
We just have one more speaker signed up.
Okay, well, thank you. And just for the committee's information, I think we'll take a brief recess after the final speaker, and then we will come back in a few minutes for executive session. So if Monica, if you could.
Okay, so next I'm going to call on Juliet Harvey Bolia. Juliet, you should be unmuted. Juliet, if you can hear us, you have to allow yourself to be unmuted. Oh, Juliet? She is on mute, Senator, but I do not hear her.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
And now we can't again.
Juliet?
Yes.
Hi. We can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think we're having some technical difficulties here. We would like to cede our time back because Senator Gaida has covered it for us for the hearing today.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm glad we're able to get that project moved up again, and appreciate that, and hope it'll help the people of Plymouth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me ask if there's anyone who did not sign up, a member of the public who would like to speak, would you please make that known now? Do we have anyone else, Monica?
We do not. That is all I have.
Well, thank you, everyone. I will close the hearing on Amendment 1366S, and I will propose that we take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back to vote to go into executive session. Okay? See you in 5. Thank you.
Hey, Sonia?
Yes.
Did you get my, the email I forwarded you and Senator Waters?
Yeah, would you like me to forward it to anyone else, the rest of the committee?
Yeah, I'm not, I mean, I don't know if we're gonna use it or not, but if it's redundant, I don't know why we're doing it, but yeah,
Right.
just in case they want to, a little bit better clarification.
Sure.
Thanks.
How we doing, everybody?
Good.
Is Ruth back with us?
I'm here.
Oh, very good. Well, thank you all. We got through it. So let me, please, I will make a motion to go into executive session.
I'll second.
And I will now read the roll. Senator Ward,
Yes, yes.
Senator Hennessy,
Yes.
Senator LeVake,
Yes.
Senator Birdsall,
Yes.
Senator Waters votes yes. And I will make a motion a vote to pass on House Bill 1182.
I'll second. Oops.
Did he freeze?
I think he,
Okay, thank you,
there he
Senator
is.
Birdsall.
There he is.
1633, yes. And we have a second from Senator Birdsall. Okay, so what I'd like to do is let's start with general discussion of HB 1182 and of the amendment, and then we can move to the potential committee amendment in the language that was brought forward during the hearing. So I will just open it up to anybody who wants to talk about the bill or the amendment.
Do you want to go to the proposed language? Because
Well, let's start with just some, if there are any questions about the overall, anything overall in the amendment as it exists, anything.
I have nothing. I like your idea of clarifying on the floor which I will do on the TNC and the taxi question.
Good. You know, we all share the concern about buses, and it's a big issue. I do hope there will be more money coming from the feds because, you know, we are seeing some reductions in service around the state because some federal funding related to construction projects is running out, and it is really adversely affecting the people with handicaps as well as the senior population. But in terms of the context of the 10-year highway plan, I think the budgetary constraints that we're doing the best we can at this point. But this is going to be a growing course in the future. I'll say too that you know, I mean, we are just entering unknown territory about what the funding is going to be. You know, we all hope that revenues will recover for the road toll, and there's some indication. You know, we all can look around, see some more traffic coming through. I was interested to see in the weekly revenue report from the treasurer that the registrations are actually holding quite good. And I'm also hearing from auto dealers that they're doing better than they thought they were going to be doing on car sales. So, I mean, there are some indications of some economic recovery, but it's so unknown. And, you know, I think there's going to be a kind of a back and forth between the FAST Act and the transportation infrastructure bill. What do you do in each one? How do you keep pressure on each one by not doing the other? And so anyways, but I still believe we will see some infrastructure funding and a FAST Act that may do more for us than we had anticipated. So, but it's really hard to have this plan before us. So that I think they've done a great job in trying to make sure we're not overbonding at this point, and that, you know, everything being pushed off a couple of years. I mean, that's hard, you know, particularly look at the Concord improvements and some other areas where we are delaying projects that really ought to start now, but I don't know what else we can do. So I think that's where we're at.
I concur with pretty much everything that you said. We're kind of going into a zone where we've never been before. So
and I suspect that unlike our usual procedures, I do believe in the budget revisions are going to have to be done for 2021. So it might be in the fiscal committee starting before, you know, before the period before January, a new legislature is seated. But I just am sure that we'll be seeing a lot of revisions to the 10-year plan that might be put into the budget. And that's just the way it's going to have to be.
Yep.
So let's turn to the proposed language. And Sonia, I know this is going to be a little complicated. Maybe we could start with Senator Khan's first, because I think it's simpler.
Okay.
And I sent that to everybody. Yes, it probably is redundant, but if, you know, I can see, it's not just that one business on Route 9. I've seen this happen around the state, and it's kind of inevitable. And I think this will give some assurance and a process too that's more explicit.
I agree. I'm fine with it. It's belt and suspenders. That's fine. The DOT is comfortable with it. So
I've gone by this place many, many times going into Keene to do my food shopping, so I know exactly what we're talking about. It was not an easy way to get into or see this little store right there in the construction zone.
So let's put that then, potentially, we'll vote on a committee amendment later, but let's just say that on that language. Sonia, are you okay? Do you have what you need?
Yes.
All right.
Senator Waters, can I just clarify that you're talking about the projects exceeding 5 million, the Department of Transportation? Okay.
Yeah.
That's
all
that
right.
one. Okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, on this other one, about the veteran issues and so on, we have the pretty simple sentence that came through Paul Warshowitz this morning from Larry Major of Pike. And, you know, I'm glad we had the opportunity for the commissioner to respond to it, and redundant, but if it makes them happy. And I will just say, as I mentioned earlier, she held a Zoom for 70 of the contractors around the state, because there have been a lot of concern about what does this really mean. And, you know, it was an extensive conversation. You know, 70 people was, everybody's surprised at how many wanted to get in on it. And they were very pleased with what they heard from her. And it was a very good conversation, and they understood and had some assurances. And so I had heard, like, as late as last night, that everybody's all good. And then this morning, I think they're just thought that perhaps a little more language would, you know, kind of cement what they had all heard on that call. So fine, I sent it to you and brought it forward. And now, Senator Birdsall, you have some, you shared it with Josh, and I have that on my phone, but
yeah, he made a couple of changes, but he basically in section, in bold, and I hope everybody has it, in section 1 where it says RSA 235:23-A through the end of fiscal year June 30th, 2021, to meet departmental operational needs as budgeted and amended by the Joint Legislative Fiscal Committee. Then he added a section 2, in the event that federal relief is received after such suspensions and transfers are made, the department is authorized with approval of the Joint Legislative Fiscal Committee and governor and council to restore betterment funded projects to the extent possible. What I would probably do is maybe, Sonia, if you want, give the language to LBA and see which one accomplishes what they want.
oh, I thank you. By Sonia, have we?
Yes.
I just was looking at the address chain here, and I don't think it's been sent to the commissioner.
Right.
So
I will forward that to
Monica,
her.
could you unmute the commissioner? Commissioner, if we send you an email right now, can you access it?
Yes.
Okay, Sonia, could you do that?
I forwarded it to Kathy because I didn't have the commissioner's email handy. Is Kathy?
Well, I can do it right now.
Well, Senator, I appreciate you calling upon us. I know you're in executive session, so
So,
appreciate the opportunity.
Commissioner, I've just sent it to you.
Okay.
And I'm a little anxious about this, Senator Birdsall, because the previous wording was innocuous and there didn't seem to be anything that was too complicated about it. I understand and I see what Josh has done, but given the way we're doing things today, I just get a little nervous about it. And we can't ask LBA to decide we have to vote a committee amendment.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah, so if we could give Commissioner Sheehan a little bit of time. Because Senator Birdsall, I don't think that there's anything that's wrong with what Larry Major provided in terms of, so if we can't do this, because go with that.
Senator, if I may, when we looked more closely at the amendment that was proposed by Mr. Orsowich on behalf of Pike Industries, we are a little bit concerned with the phrasing of one sentence. I don't think it's their intent. However, it could be interpreted that when they say restore, we would have to put the money back into that account. So rather than specifically stating that we would go back to collecting the 3 cents in accordance with the statute, when they say restore, some could interpret that to mean that we have to put any money that we took during fiscal year 21 back into that account. And if we really are short the revenue, that won't be possible. So at first glance, we'd much prefer the language that was proposed by Josh and the Senate staff than what was put forward by Mr. Worsowich, because I believe it more clearly articulates what they were hoping to achieve.
So, Commissioner, are you okay with the language that Josh provided?
I believe so. It's short notice to be reviewing it, but at first glance, it would be appropriate. Yeah, I think this would work for us.
Okay. All right. So, again, committee, this is.
Sorry about bringing this up.
No. It's good. I mean, we need to take our time, and I appreciate very much, Senator, and Josh has done. So, Sonia, I guess that I would make. I guess, do we have to do a separate committee amendment motion, or do we talk through what we're going to include, and then that will be included in the
Yes.
1360, what's the number?
It's 1366. If we have consensus from the committee on these additions, then you would just need one vote on a committee amendment if everyone's in consensus.
All right. So,
Mr. Chair, can we have a copy of the change that's been made? Or is it written down somewhere?
Josh's suggestion, I did just forward it to your personal email a few minutes ago.
Oh, thank you.
So what we will have, Senator LeVake and committee members, is the language from Khan and the language from Josh will be incorporated in a committee amendment, which will be constituted by 1366 and this incorporated language. So,
do you want a motion?
So, Senator Birdsall, would you please make your motion?
I move, just correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I move 2020-1366S with the changes agreed to by the committee ought to pass. Does that work?
Second, is that the language we need, Sonia? Okay.
Exactly.
Second.
So here we are. We're going to have local aircraft. We're going to keep the.
That was a nice treat thrown in there.
Yeah, well, a little surprise coming from leadership, but
hey, you know.
That's why they're leadership, and I'm just Senator Sock Puppet, you know. So I feel very good about what we'll be able to accomplish. You know, given what happened in the House, it's just so essential the Senate was able to come together in a bipartisan way and put these other bills together, but also the 10-year highway plan. You know, it's not as if we could not have a 10-year highway plan. And I appreciate the governor's office and everybody who's come together to make this one truly one that will have consensus in both bodies. So I will call the roll.
Oops. Hopefully you're still there.
He's frozen.
Roll on Senator Birdsell's. Are we unfrozen? Can people hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little.
Yeah.
All right, let's get these votes. Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator LeVake.
Yes.
And I was going to say Senator Cooper. Go across my screen. Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
And Senator Waters votes yes. So now I will call the roll on the motion on.
I move. You want a motion?
1182 as amended. I move ought to pass.
Second.
And I will, any further discussion? Call the
Can
roll.
I have discussion.
Oh, excuse me, please, Senator LeVake.
I would just like to add on the entire omnibus bill that that I'm very proud of the bill that we were able to pass today, and the combination of the 10-year plan, which is critical, and safety elements like the counterfeit airbags and the crash data, helping the Manchester Airport, which is something that the Transportation Council has been working on, as well as removing the tolls. And I love the roadable aircraft because we need to be innovative and we need to look to the future. So excellent job, Chairman, and something we can all be very proud of.
And I'll second that.
Well, thank you so much, Senator LeVake, and for your work on this. And I guess we're going to be known as the Jetson Committee when this is all said and done.
Cool. Okay.
So I will call the roll. Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator LeVake.
Yes.
And Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
Senator Waters votes yes. I will take this out, and we'll be concluding our formal business executive session, but I didn't want to let this moment pass without some words for our colleague, Senator Hennessy. We're not going to be able to have our traditional lunch unless we count getting a pathetic little sandwich at our desks next Tuesday. Transportation Committee lunch. I don't know. But Senator Hennessy, thank you so much for everything you've done on this committee and of course in the Senate as well. But I did want to have you have an opportunity to be recognized.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. This it's been a pleasure serving on the Transportation Committee and of course in the Senate. And I shall miss a lot of things. I'm not sure I'll miss Zoom calls, but I will miss our meetings and seeing my friends' faces. So all of you who are on this call. So I appreciate that very much. And I don't think I will disappear completely, but I certainly will be in a different, having a different license plate. Let's put it that way.
Oh, well, thank you again. It's hard to say goodbye in this fashion, but we'll see you next Tuesday. And of course, to be seeing you after this. But
I appreciate
such a good committee here, and you know, a lot of work has gone to create the culture of this committee by previous chairs, and it's been good to work with you. So thank you.
I'll tell you, my decision was made just slightly easier when we heard last week that our 6th granddaughter is going to be born in December.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And they'll be in Los Angeles, so it'll be nice to be able to help.
Well, you're going to have plenty to do, Grandma.
Yeah, all girls.
Wow.
Well, I will make a motion to come out of executive session and have a second. And I will call the roll. Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator LeVake.
Yes.
Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
And Senator Waters votes yes. So here we are. We're zooming away, folks. And see you all next Tuesday. And Sonia, Monica, Alan, Marie, Griffin, everybody. Alan, everybody. We did it.
Thank you.
Yay.
To the staff. You made it all.
Hey, David,
Yes.
are you going to be around in a couple of minutes? Because I want to give you a call about the prayer.
Oh, yeah. I thank you for mentioning that. 'Cause I mean, I got a lot to pray for, but not much the Senate is going to want to hear about. I was going to call you, so please give me a call. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.